Okay.
So welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this talk about collecting art in challenging times. Thank you, Taipei Dongdai, for hosting this conversation, and thank you to our three speakers for accepting this invitation. Benedicta Badia, Cindy Chua-Tay, and Alain Servais. A quick introduction before I introduce our speakers. We are living an unprecedented situation that affects the world in its totality, and that is what challenging times refers to. Art has always been related to a physical experience, and most of the art spaces have closed doors. Also, though it might be a new reality for some markets are constantly challenged in different ways. And these are two notes I wanted to do before we start. We are listening the response and opinions of many professionals of the art ecosystem, from fairs, galleries, and artists over the past few weeks or few months. And for this conversation, we have three international collectors and patrons with a deep knowledge of the art ecosystem, and they will share with us their journey and experience of the present day through their own presence as collectors. So let me introduce our speakers. Benedicta Badia, hello.
Hello.
Benedicta, she's an Argentinian collector, actually based in Singapore. Benedicta's journey in the art world spans more than 20 years, so with many facets, if I could say, from representative of a gallery, specialized art translator for Art Nexus, a Latin American art magazine, among others. In addition, she has worked for international art fairs such as Art Basel Miami and Art Mauricio Fair in New York. As a philanthropist, Benedicta's advocacy and passion to contemporary art and artists has been steadfast. Her strong involvement has always been accompanied with collecting, supporting, and promoting art, thus establishing strong bonds with galleries, curators, and artists internationally. Benedicta, she's a member of the Guggenheim Museum Latin Cycle of Acquisition Committee in New York, an international advisory board committee of Fundación Arteba in Buenos Aires, board member and second generation founder of Intuit Outsider Art Center in Chicago, and benefactor of several museums at the Museo Tamayo, MCA Chicago, Dakar Art Summit, Bangladesh, to name just a few. Cindy Chua-Tay, hello. Hello, Cindy. Cindy, she's a Singaporean collector based between Hong Kong and New York, and in fact, Cindy calls Hong Kong home. So Cindy, you are part of the Guggenheim Museum since 2013, and in 2015, you have been appointed to the Museum Board of Trustees. This makes you one of the youngest, and also first Asian board member on the foundation. Together with her husband Liam, you have been supporting of the emerging art scene. You have been supporters of the emerging art scene in Singapore for many years, and have been awarded the Patron of the Arts Award by the National Arts Council. They have been conscientiously collecting for over 15 years, mostly gravitating towards contemporary art. In connection with her role in the art world, she says, previously I was just a spectator. I could like or dislike the exhibition and walk away, and life would continue. It looks very difficult to me now as a custodian of this institution. Now I feel a keen sense of responsibility, how sacred and important it is to be in this role. And we will talk about this during this conversation. And our first speaker, Alain Servais. Hello, Alain.
Hello.
So Alain, he's a Belgian collector based in Brussels. Alain was originally trained in investment banking in New York and London, and he was head of international bond trading at the private bank D-Way in Brussels, and a member of the technical committee which put in place Belfox, the Belgian Futures and Options Exchange. He is currently an independent consultant to banks in the management of asset-backed securities. He's a passionate and committed contemporary art collector, a member of committees such as the Art Basel's Council of Global Patron, and actively engaged in the issues of the art industry and market. He's also a member of the advisory board of NEO, the home of new media art. And in 2010, he founded The Loft, a 900 square meter exhibition space of the Family Servais collection in Brussels that includes artists residency. So thank you very much to all of you to join this conversation and to accept to share your views. I have a first question to the three of you. What is the current situation of the art world in your respective cities? And Benedicta, you are from Argentina, so what is the current situation in Argentina? Alain in Belgium and in Brussels, and Cindy in Hong Kong. Benedicta?
Okay, so Argentina is completely in lockdown. It has been for a month almost. They had to cancel their art fair, their annual art fair, and they also used an online platform to sort of bridge between the cancellation and the physical, presence and online. Latin America the countries have been taking different approaches. Some of them have used like strict measures like Argentina, but Brazil and Mexico haven't really put in place social distancing and all what we all are doing. It's very worrisome, specifically in Brazil. We just heard that there's a big legal feud between the cancellation of the art fair. The biggest one in Sao Paulo, which is SPH, and the galleries. It's been all over the news. And we are worried because we know we are losing an art fair that's very important for the region. So. And we are talking about a region that has no really an infrastructure, the government infrastructure is lacking. So the virus is gonna, make a lot of damage. It is making a lot of damage at this point. And of course, galleries are closed, etc. No?
Alain, in Brussels?
We are in ending a confinement that lasted a month and a half. Galleries are reopening next Tuesday. We're quite excited to go back there. Probably museums very shortly afterwards, something like May 18th.
Great. And Cindy from about Hong Kong.
I haven't been back to Hong Kong since February, but I'll just give you a quick overview. Hong Kong, unlike other countries, they never really had a lockdown. There's no circuit breaker, but I think people just reacted to market conditions. So there was no edict to say you can't open your gallery. Most galleries just closed out of, the fact that people were not going out, people were exercising social distancing, so it didn't make sense for them to stay open. But this week, I'm happy to announce that Hong Kong sort of finally, opened up, meaning people can go back in full capacity. And I know this week, lots of galleries have started opening with almost a new way of inviting people into the gallery. You're welcome to go in, but you can also access them online. Some galleries I know are going to be opening a big show end of May. So if anything, hopefully that will be inspiring to others around the world, that there is hopefully a silver lining and that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So yes, this is what's happening in Hong Kong at the moment. We were disappointed, obviously, because we had to decide to cancel Art Basel. That was a big and difficult decision, but the right one to do. And so over time, things are just slowly going back to normal. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much for...
Cindy, if I may interrupt, what's interesting is I think the move from the galleries to the sidelines a little bit. Do you think it's gonna happen? And how do you feel about this?
That's actually good. I think it's made people a little more comfortable, that it's not overcrowded, that everyone's sort of housed in one building or two buildings that are close by. I think the places that you're talking about in Aberdeen and Wong Chuk Hang, where it's further, there's a little bit more space. I think people welcome that. And people, it's just a nice alternative for people to go and see. For the galleries as well, for Belgian gallery, Axel's gallery, there's a lot more space. So I think people do cherish that. That's hard to come by in Hong Kong. So it's a really welcome change. Mm-hmm.
And would you agree with me that looked horrible there in Central?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you, Alain.
Would you agree with me that art looked terrible in Central anyway?
Well, there was room for improvement, so it's a step in the right direction. Yes.
So thank you. So let's start. So I have my first question for Benedicta. How has the current situation changed your way of collecting?
Well, I have been for the past, we have a limited budget per year that we assign to buying art. And there are several things that we've been trying to this past month, thinking of, trying to make decisions. One of them is trying to atomize the buy. So basically, instead of buying, you know, bigger or more expensive works, see we can just divide, let's suppose, $50,000 in 5 of 10. So we can help 5 galleries instead of only 1. The other thing we are thinking, especially when in our roles in institutional institutions, museums or any, it's just like think of the percentage of secondary market versus primary market. At this point, the next 2 years, if we're going to buy secondary market, we would probably spend a lot of money in like that we could give to younger galleries and live artists. I'm not saying not to, you know, spend money in the secondary market, but yes, evaluate the percentage in our budget, the percentage of secondary market versus primary market. The other thing is with bigger buys, I'm also asking galleries that are sort of in a more developed market and are available to have help from government or grants. If they could like rescind a little bit of their gain, and we are applying that to emerging markets, very young artists and we are telling them, okay, I do have a limited budget. I cannot, you know, so I do tell them, okay, with this money, I'm going to buy this. And in Latin America, $300 is probably worth, I don't know, 2 months of food. So with everything we're doing, we are trying to buy as much as we can from emerging markets, young galleries, and trying to keep them viable. We are also talking a lot and seeing, you know, different models to see what's going to happen. We really think that we have to support the next 2 years. They're going to be tough. And so we need to be very conscious of how we spend our budget the next 2 years.
And where or how do you collect? I mean, it might seem an obvious question, but the situation is really different. You were mentioning that galleries are closed, and so what is your day-to-day as a collector in that task?
Well, I always receive at least 10 PDFs per day. So for sure, I see art more than 4 hours a day. Some I discard, but so I'm very used to really analyzing online, and but apart from maybe discovering an artist and starting maybe an online relationship, I hardly would buy online directly at someone I don't know. I like to know who's the gallerist. I like to know what is the relationship with the artist. I like to know, you know, their pedigree in some way. What have they done? I like to even look into the eyes of the gallerist. I need to know who they are and what's their role and how they take their role in the ecosystem. So it will be very hard for me to expand to new horizons or new artists online, for example. But I am capable. Once I know, I choose from PDFs and online with ease. I have no problems with that.
So what is the room, in fact, for discovery in that current situation?
That's a good question. Maybe it would be geographically, like for example, thinking of, okay, let's see what's happening in India. So I can get in online, I have all the galleries in India in only one platform, or let me see. So I think I'm focusing on geography to see more what is the aroma of them, what are they producing, in contemporary art, and what is the aroma, what is the trend, what are they doing. I think online is very good for finding trends, understanding, you know, especially paradigms that are very foreign to me. I was raised and born in the Judeo-Christian paradigm, and I'm living now in a completely different one. And the art world is different. It is, and the art that is being produced here is very different as well.
You mean the art that has been produced in the last years, or in the last? Have you seen
Southeast Asia, like the lifestyle, the way the area? I mean, Southeast Asia, Middle East. I think I was very sheltered before, because I mean, not moving from the Americas, and when I moved to Asia, I was like, wow. So yeah, I think the online experience for me at this point is very much sort of like a intellectual, you know, game where I can place, okay, all this, I can see the connections between different galleries, or I can see trends between galleries of the same area, for example.
Okay, you mentioned earlier, I will come, I go back. You mentioned earlier that you ask galleries that are more comfortable or more solid, I would say, during this time. You ask them to be more flexible. I don't remember the term you use, but you ask them, I would like to tell us more about that.
For me, coming from an area like Latin America, or the same as, I mean, not Singapore, but Southeast Asia, there's no system in place for them to, if they close, there's no government help, there's no healthcare. Most of the galleries in Latin America, the artists don't have healthcare. The galleries don't have healthcare. They don't have their social security for their retirement. There's a whole system that the public health is, you know, almost collapsed. So imagine what's going to happen in the, you know, in the countries that haven't closed. So for me now, it's like, okay, I'm asking galleries, for example, maybe new, and I'm having really a very good response. And can you give me a little bit more discount on these galleries that I know that have those systems in place, and that money I will spend it, I'm not saving it, I'm spending it in maybe a gallery in Guatemala, a gallery in Bolivia, a gallery in Paraguay, I mean, an artist in Paraguay. I mean, artists that are really for them, it's you know, paying bills, food, and there's a lot of, you know, as well, efforts in the community to help as well, to support and help. So that's what I'm trying to do.
How galleries are responding usually?
Well, I know we talked about, there's one gallery specifically in Argentina that did, they own an auction house with secondary market collectors.
So sorry, excuse me. In terms, in fact, of your demand, what we were just talking about, how galleries are responding to that in this conversation, or if I can say, this negotiation.
Amazingly. You mean? Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought amazingly. They really. I mean, my motto now, it's, we are not leaving this crisis we alone. We have to do it as a community. And today I help you. Tomorrow you help me. And I am very surprised, and everybody has been super generous. Any kind of discount I've gotten any kind, and I respect if they cannot give me any discount, is applied to galleries that need that money, or artists that need that money.
Well, yeah. This is, thank you. This is, you talked about how you adapt your budget, and for me it's, and we're talking about money, in fact, in the art, and it's for me the perfect transition to make a question to Alain. I wonder if the galleries are adapting their policies of pricing, payments, and Alain, is it something that you have seen already, that you are hearing around the changes in gallery policies?
Things are changing slowly, and in a way, we are in this crisis for 2 months, and it looks to be very long, but it's very short at the same time. I mean, it went very fast in the way we lived it. So to really distinguish changes, deep changes is a little bit difficult. What I would like to go back a little bit, what I learned from all this is that I don't want to do art online. So I don't do art online at all during this whole time. I prefer to do something else. I'm certainly working from home, and I'm happy with this, but the idea of going online with Freeze yesterday, for example, was totally impossible to me. I was disappointed by the Art Basel viewing rooms. It was really technologically very poor. It reminded me as well how much the art ecosystem is very conservative in terms of technology. You, Sabrina, and Hal had to be aware, because you have a particular program from Spain, so for a very long time, you had to be very present online. So you prepared yourself for a very long time, and you've got a very strong strategy online. But many of the galleries don't. And so suddenly they jumped into something that was so amateur that I was speaking to some friends in Scandinavia that are managing an app for presentation of works online called Artlands. And they were saying, in a way, it's a disservice to the community, because it's such a poor quality and such a bad experience that, you know, looking at PDF, we do look at PDF, we could look at PDF forever, and we should not. So one thing is, I'm not trying to hunt, I mean, and also, are we obsessed or not? I mean, can we stop looking at buying art online for 2 months? I'm looking forward going back to the galleries. I'm looking forward traveling again. Yesterday, we heard for the first time that there will be probably a gallery weekend in Paris on July 2nd and 3rd. So I want to go back. I want to go on a plane again and go to galleries. So it reminded me, for one thing, is I don't want to go online, certainly not in the condition that there is right now.
There is, maybe sorry, Alain, it's true. We know each other, but maybe also there is the fact that you are also a collector that really dive into an art scene, as you were telling me previously. You don't focus only on one piece or one artist. You really, so yeah, maybe
the context is important. That's what the online experience is so poor, is that in a way, I always enjoy the way the setup of the works of art in space is adding something, whether it's a biennial in India, in Kochi, or whether it's in all those industrial buildings in Hong Kong. I mean, the way the setup is done is very different. So what we are missing is that all of it is even more commodified when it's online in many ways. So in a way,
a collector like you need that, and I understand, like, some collectors might be able to do it online. Many of us, we can choose online, but I think it's true that the relationship and the physical presence is important as well.
So what we've been doing is we've been going back to works that we liked in the last 2 years. We went through the list of works that were still in our mind, but that we could not follow up. And as we've got particular taste, very often the works are still available. So we went back to this and we acquired works. We acquired already 4 or 5 works in the last 2 months. But these works that we had seen before and that we knew from advance. We're not trying to look at the new offerings and so on. Also, you know, the art fair, it's a big question mark about, for me, there was an art for art fair. And that's the art I'm missing the least, the art that was produced for art fairs. And so I'm very happy not to look at it even more in those circumstances. So I would say,
I have a question, because art fair, I'm sorry, because art fair, I think we're gonna talk about it, and I'm sure we have a lot to say about it. But I wanted to know, you're coming back to conversations on pieces you had you saw in the last 2 years. How are you having conversations with galleries, and how are these conversations?
So yes, we have conversation with people we like. We try to do one call per day with only one with people we like to try to feel a little bit how it's going in Paris, and also opening up Gary's mind, because except for a few cases, they are very much you know, regrouped or focused on their very short-term situation. It's a global evolution. Things are changing, in my opinion, deeply. For one thing already, is that in a way, for 9 months, there will not be art fairs. So it's a special windows for galleries to think about, you know, what can I do and what can we do during that 1 month, during those 9 months. And because many galleries are still hoping there will be some art fairs, they're still, okay, let's wait. No, you cannot wait. You need to do something now, because galleries will reopen, and you need to do something that will bring people back in the galleries, which will help you in many ways, because, you know, the constraint of the art fairs was a big problem for many of them, because it was like a help and also a very heavy stone around their neck, because they had to be part of it, and it increased their fixed cost very much. So yeah, we're discussing with galleries, trying to broaden and to say, okay, move now. Don't spend money online in those online viewing rooms. It's too late. I mean, either you had it before and you had a strategy before, either don't waste your time on it at all. Or try to connect yourself to a big platform, because I keep saying to the people, I mean, it's not a technological tool which counts. It's the community. Either you build yourself a community in advance, like Sabrina did, Gagosian, Art Basel, you know, Sabrina Amrani, and so on. So either you build yourself a community in advance, or right now it's too noisy. Don't even try. And if you need to spend money, try to spend money on something else.
Sabrina, one question maybe that I'm coming back to what Alain is saying is, like, do you think the validation system of the art fairs is going to change? Like, oh, you know, we got into Art Basel, or do you think it's going to change in the long run because of this 9 months without fairs, this, you know, reshuffling of the art world?
It's only a short-term cut. So yes, the art fair is talking about the validation of the galleries.
Yes.
No, it will stay. I mean, again, we don't have the time to change. I think art fairs have still a role to play. This is not what I mean. Probably that role became a little bit too heavy, and it's an opportunity to bring it back to something backwards a little bit and retake some kind of control. Art fairs have got a role to play for people that have less time, that are looking for different kind of arts. But for the kind of art that I like, it was a little bit overwhelming and becoming superficial again. So that was, it's just an opportunity to do it now.
But
the question, sorry,
Alain, but there is something
going back to your question about the strategy. Yes, I'm happy to see some galleries trying to do something else. You know, having for sure, for example, the Zwirner initiative, but also the Perrotin initiative. So for the international audience, Zwirner, I think it's pretty clear. Perrotin is in Paris, so probably far from Asia. So Perrotin, who's a major international gallery present in Hong Kong as well, decided to reopen next week by inviting 24 galleries of Paris by a group of 6 during 4 sessions of 2 weeks. So it's quite a long period of 2.5 months in one of their spaces, and they will allow them to present one artist and one work in the space as a kind of a sign of support. So what Benedicta said is right as well. Collaboration will be very important, and solidarity by art scene. You know, different art scene will be different thing. We're going to go back to the local. So of course, Perrotin is an international gallery, but he's doing something for the Paris art scene. So it's very interesting what other people do. Another gallery in Paris, Valeria Cetraro, they decided to do a special catalog, which lasts 1 month, where every artist at the gallery is presenting a good work, not a minor work, a good work for a very significant discount or something like 50%. But it's valid only for this piece for this month. If it's not sold, then it goes back to the previous price before. So yes,
there is something here interesting, because it's one of the things I am wondering as this idea of pricing. Is the value in terms of financial value is changing during challenging times? And it's really a tough question, I guess, to answer. But I would be curious to hear the three of you about this.
Who would not agree that the prices of art went way too high too fast? We are all collecting for 20 years in this panel or more, and we remember that time where we could buy extremely good work of art for $5,000 to $6,000. So now the first entry points for Art Basel or anywhere else is like 10, 15, 20. And you hear so often that very disturbing statement by a gallerist, oh, this is very cheap, it's $20,000 only. I mean, are you kidding me? For $20,000, you buy a perfectly brand new car of high quality. I mean, this is the price of a car. So this is not something that you can say. So definitely in the last 10 years, the price of art has been pulled up by the 0.1%, which was a little bit taking too much room in the art world. You know, the 0.1% is the new money, unsophisticated money very much. I mean, the fancy one that was going to Central, we spoke about Central before. I found horrible to see art among shopping malls and Gucci and Prada. It looks horrible. And the art which was shown there was also of that type. So we're gonna pass the word to Cindy.
Now, exactly. That's what I wanted to do.
But I'm happy to see the changes coming, and we're going back to maybe some more importance to art.
So Cindy, in fact, what would be your point of view about this? And you are
this is refreshing. This is so refreshing. I agree with both of you. I agree with Benedicta about what needs to be done as a community, and what Alain says, that we all have to come together, especially now more so than ever. But I also agree with Alain when he talked about, you know, as a personal collector, you tend to go during this time, you go back to artists that you have bought before, that you've collected, because you have a comfort level, you know their practice, you've done your own due diligence, you know the gallery. So I tend to gravitate, you know, going back to, you know, artists that I have been collecting deeply. So I think that's when you want to buy something this time, it's easier to go back to works that you're familiar with and with galleries that you know, that you trust. And I agree with Alain also about, you know, how it's becoming, everyone's sort of jumping on this so-called online bandwagon, and it's just a loud noise going out there. It's very hard to navigate that. We struggle. I speak on behalf of the museum. We struggle because the past 2 months we've been we struggled with having to close the physical museum, dealing with all the complications that come with closing a physical space. And then at the same time, we're being told ramp up online. And I feel like it's difficult. There's no way of communicating a show that you see physically in person and then trying to communicate that on an online platform. It's like saying, come and watch a live musical on Broadway and then I'm going to stream it. And you can't quite communicate the same level, the depth, you know. You try your best, but it's not always possible. And I think the curators in our museum at the Guggenheim struggle because they're artists too, and they're perfectionists. So they want everything to be perfect, and you can't quite do that. But at the same time, if you don't do that, you seem to be missing out. You seem to say, oh, but another museum across the street on Museum Mall is going online. They're taking people to studio visits. So you don't want to miss out on that as well. So it's a constant struggle. I think people are still trying to grapple with what do we do? How do we make the experience somewhat palatable, educational, yet, you know, doing justice to the exhibition, making sure the narrative of the exhibition is somehow communicated in its entirety. There's no answer. I think everyone's trying to figure the best way around this. But I do agree with Alain. Everyone's jumping on this. Museums are trying to give you all these virtual tours. It's a bit of an information overload. I think we see a lot more now, but it doesn't necessarily mean we're seeing better work. We're just suddenly given this this new platform, and everyone seems to be jumping on it. So I speak on behalf of the museum. I think it's important to be able to let the outside world and the patrons see what's going on in the museum, but navigating it and doing it correctly, that's going to be that's going to be a challenge, even down the road. So I do hope, and I do want to believe that the time will come when the museums will open again, just like galleries will open again. People need to go back and see it and feel it and be in contact and conversation with the art and with the curators. I think that's really important. I remember our museum director telling me this, and I was very encouraged. She said 9/11 happened on a Tuesday, and everything in New York City came to a complete standstill. But then on Saturday of that week, people were back in the museums, and they welcomed that. They were happy to be in a community with people where, you know, there was a sense of comfort and security, and knowing that you look around and that there's hope, that there's life, and that life is going to go back to normal, that there's a rhythm that's going to be, you know, going to be back in the groove again. So I want to stay positive. I want to, you know, like Alain said, he seems to be counting down to next Tuesday when the galleries open in Brussels. I welcome that. So I welcome the ability to travel, to see shows, and I think that's important. We have to, you know, stay focused on that. Yes, you know, institutionally, galleries, we all have to do what we have sort of to just ride this storm. But there must come a point in time where we can go back to some sense of normalcy again.
But internet is a new player. In fact, internet is a new player within the art ecosystem right now, new for many galleries. Can't we say that it's adding something? Do you I mean, I have the feeling that it's negative, and but I want to believe that internet is bringing and adding something to the art world.
Well, I think
I don't think it's negative.
Sorry.
I think it's just another avenue for people to have access to it. But I know it's not negative. It's just that it's during this time there seems to be just a lot of information. It's like an information overload. Everyone's, you know, jumping on and trying to show this and see this and click here and go left and you can get the price, and there's just a lot. I think that it's here to stay. I think it's how you do it. I think when it's done in a hurry, it doesn't do the work justice. Definitely here to stay. How we do it, I think it's got to be a gradual, thoughtful process. It's just another avenue, like going to the museum. Not negative necessarily, just hard to comprehend how to do it properly and professionally at this stage.
And have you been able to collect on art, Cindy? Have you been able to collect online?
I have to say that I'm able to only do that for artists that I have owned and I've bought in the past, and therefore the work is not new to me. The artist is not new to me, so I know the artist's practice, and so it's easier to go back. And like Alain said, I'm actually going back to works that was shown to me maybe before this pandemic, and it's still available, and then I'm revisiting. But I will, and I do find it hard to explore and buy a piece of art that I've never seen in person. That for me is challenging and difficult, and I want to try and overcome that, because as a patron, I know we all want to support in some way, shape, or form, but it is hard to do that if you're not familiar and you've not come into contact. I'm very big on texture and visual and touching, and I think it's challenging if you haven't had that first encounter, in-person encounter with artists or with the galleries. For me personally. Some people can.
You were a patron of the Guggenheim, for example. I'm wondering, what is your role or the role of the patrons right now with this museum closed?
I think as a board of trustees, we've always tried to maintain a high level of transparency with our patrons, and now more so than ever, we feel that we need to bring our patrons into the situation so they can offer their advice and guidance in how we can navigate the situation and find solutions together. I think we've been very lucky. We've got patrons like Benedicta in a Latin American circle where people really come together as a community. We decided as a museum that just for this year, 2020, all the affinity groups, which generally are acquisition groups, that the monies raised will go towards the general funding of the museum and not for acquisitions at this point in time, because this is the importance of keeping the museum alive, and the survival and the continuity is important. So we've been blessed, we've been very lucky that patrons have stepped in and have agreed to do so. Obviously, we want to start acquiring again, but that's something that it's in the plans for 2021. But generally, I've been very encouraged. Patrons have been very supportive. They understand the situation. They empathize with us because we've had to make the difficult decisions of having to furlough a lot of our employees. Some have had to be laid off full time. Some have had to have salary cuts. It's heart-wrenching. It's a difficult decision, and as a board we meet constantly, and just talking about it, it's emotional for me, but we have to move on. That's the only way to keep the community going, and we have been very lucky that patrons have been supportive. Whether art philanthropy is here to stay, whether that money is going to go somewhere. In some cases, maybe healthcare seems obviously more pertinent now. We don't know. The sort of future exhibitions, no one has any form of certainty. I think it will change though. I think the big shows, the mega blockbuster shows, I call them, where they have international loans, I think, with sizable carbon footprint, I think that's going to recede. I think it's hard to have those shows now and in the near future. I do think that a museum is going to have to look at its own existing collection and its collectives, i.e. the curators, the artists, and maybe recognize that for the next year or so, shows have to be on a smaller scale. Maybe the show, I think museums are going to be sort of physically local, but try and have an international reach, through other avenues. But it's challenging times ahead, but we mustn't give up. I want to believe that there's hope.
Benedicta, you wanted to say something before?
I think from what we're talking, we are all an ecosystem. So we are all actors in an ecosystem. And I think the next 2 years are going to be super tough. And I think it's a time to call for frugality. In many ways, what Alain was saying, that it became too much. It became, overwhelming. So one of the concepts we've been talking a lot about is dividing the ideal from the essential. So even we, as we're going back to our essential. So jumping into overdoing it again, of this, like the FOMO, that they were like, okay, maybe this is a time for maybe some visual silence. Maybe this is a time where we reshuffle, and really galleries, museums, all of us, we have to say, okay, how we have to be very conscious of how we spend, what we do, and divide what is essential to the art market and what is ideal. Yeah, ideally we would have, fly all over the world. This is not our reality now. So understanding within your infrastructure, within your reality, because the Guatemalan reality, the Argentine reality is not the reality of Singapore, Japan, Australia. Each one has their own, hurdles. But definitely this is something we need to, all of us at the same time, think of, okay, let's go back to essentials. Let's calm down.
So coming back to this essential, how would you, and it's a question to the three of you, maybe we can hear Alain, how would you define your role or responsibility as a collector in this challenging time?
We are just one component of the ecosystem. This notion is very important. It's a whole ecosystem, going from the artists, of course, the galleries, the museums, the collectors, the critics, and the press, because we haven't spoken about this, but the press will be very hard hit. The art press will be very hard hit by this crisis as well. So we are part of an ecosystem, and we must do our part. Mm-hmm. What we cannot do is do it alone in many ways, because it's always, very often I've been blaming the ecosystem to think about collectors as only checkbooks. I've been offered to be part of many committee of every single museum in the world, and I always refuse because I just feel like a checkbook, and they pretend that I'm part of the whole thing, but I'm just a checkbook at the end of the day.
For the Guggenheim, we are a family.
We're recruiting you next, Alain.
So whatever. So what I mean by this, I'm not blaming museum. I'm just saying, and the same with the galleries. The galleries are considering us as checkbooks and not as potential partners, because we have something to exchange. We are very often coming from the business world, having a broader vision than them on many problems. So it can be an exchange as well. So as a collector, I think we are an active part of the whole ecosystem, and we should also be given that place. Because of course we are very visible in the press because the press loves us. But at the end of the day, we are also a very important part of the whole thing. I remember when I was commenting 15 years ago to a major New York collectors, I was telling him, wow, I love your museum in New York. They're just amazing and fantastic. And the strength and the knowledge and everything. And he said, okay, the only thing they're doing is waiting for guys like me to die. Because at the end of the day, it's the private collectors that are making the collection. The Guggenheim collection is coming from a series of individuals. The same with the Whitney, the same with the MoMA, the same with major museums. The British museums is starting from a private collection, and so on and so on. So yes, I think that private collectors have an important role to play. They must play it, and I think it would be good that the ecosystem try to consider us as partners in some way for some of us, because it's true that there are some obnoxious galleries, there are obnoxious collectors as well. Let's be honest and not lie to ourselves. I mean, they are just the guys that come for the party and the girls or the boys, because you know, the art world is very
all of them.
multi-sexual.
So what collectors can do right now, and I agree with you with this idea of beyond collecting art. So what would be the ways or the role, if there is a new role, what collectors could do right now? Beyond collecting.
We still have to spend money because that's our part in the ecosystem. So let's spend money still.
You can spend money in different terms. I mean, not only acquiring. I mean, you yourself, you have a space that's open with exhibition. You have an artist residency. I mean, there is many ways, and I'm always thinking, what role can collectors have right now beyond acquiring?
I think there's something that we haven't, it's maybe a romantic idea, but in the next, I'm thinking forward, looking forward, it's the object of desire. What's going to happen in 2 years or 3 years when an artist they haven't sold a piece? So there is going to be a moment where if we do not keep the demand, or we don't keep the desire for work, artists are going to say, why am I even bothering to produce? So even if it's circulating, even if it's talking, even if it's taking, you know, attention on what they are on their work, we do need to put their, you know, to listen to them, to look at their work, make them feel desired. I think the collector has a unique, we have a very morbid, you know, liking to acquire things. There's you know, all sorts of feelings there, but the artists also need that kind of demand or feeling they're significant, they're relevant, they are, you know.
Yeah, but one of the things that came out is too much money in the last few years, but too many artists as well. So I'm sorry, I don't want to say, we cannot save them all. We cannot save them all, and we cannot look at them all. So our role is, I mean, the question I'm still asking myself every time I acquire a work of art is, and it was in the past already, and it's even more today, do I stand a chance that someone will want to look at this in 30 years' time? 30 years' time, not next month, it's 30 years' time. That's the question I ask myself. I always ask myself.
Why do you ask yourself that question?
Because my benchmark is the museum. Arts, for me, is only important if it's worth preserving for the next generation. So I fell in love with art in museums, and what I want to have at home is something that I feel like is museum quality. And it can be very cheaply priced. It's not a question of big money, because you can, if you are very good, like many of those collectors that helped building those major collection of the Guggenheim and MoMA, is that those people were looking forward and very demanding and very looking under every stone. So we still have to play that role, but it's a demanding role. It's not a social role of being nice to everyone, talking to everyone, and giving hope to everyone. No, we must also be.
I think you're separating it from the human factor behind that work. There's a human being that will. So that's what I'm saying. As a role as a collector is okay. You have that piece, but someone produced it. What happens if that museum piece, suddenly that artist gets depressed or doesn't want to produce anymore? Or we are facing an unprecedented moment in the next 2 or 3 years are going to be tough emotionally on all of us.
I think the three of you share this idea of the responsibility of the collector in a certain way, and the fact that the role of the collector as a custodian. And knowing the three of you, I mean, it's something that you have in common. We have a few questions, and I think so. Maybe we can start. So a question from Lucia. It would also be interesting to know what are the concerns of collectors at the moment. So Cindy, maybe do you have concerns as a collector? I mean, you talked about concerns as a patron, as a museum patron.
Yeah, I think personally as a collector, I don't have personal concerns about it. I think we all have our own issues, we all had different stages in our lives, and then you just deal with it as an individual. So I don't have one per se personally, but I do have huge concerns, as you said, as a custodian of a museum. And back to the question about the role we play, I think that it's very easy to call ourselves patrons of the arts, but what does that really mean? And like Alain said, it's more than just writing a check. It's more than supporting a show. It's really about nurturing the art scene. It's about, nurturing an artist from, someone who's relatively unknown, to someone to help them grow artistically as an individual. And hopefully if their works take shape and does well, then it's good for them, good for us too as patrons. But there's so much more than just the financial part of it. And it's a long, arduous, difficult journey. And it's the same when you support any endeavor. You have to be in it. Your heart has to be in the right place. And the journey the endeavor is painful, it's very difficult, and it's long. And it's and I think the sense of commitment and passion has to be there. It can't change. It's not a trend sort of thing where, collecting art tends to be a trend and everybody's jumping in on the bandwagon, but it really is so much more than that. And I think you have to ask yourself, what does that really mean? What's my role? Not just for my own collection and what I personally like, but what's your role as a member of the art ecosystem? And that constantly changes. And with this climate, obviously you're forced to rethink it. Mm-hmm.
There is a question for Alain, because we're in the last minute of this talk, so I give room to some questions. Do you know, Alain, what John Koenig has been doing since the confinement started and his Instagram lives? He decided to invest all the money he would invest in fairs in digital marketing, combined with reopening his space. If you know, what do you think about this initiative from the gallery or strategy?
That's an opportunity to answer your question about not everything is bad about internet. You're totally right. We're going to keep, the good side of it. Whatever comes out of this crisis, we're going to keep the good side of it. Yes, we need better documentation of exhibition. I mean, even the Guggenheim, yes, it's nice to see the Ilma Afklein's exhibition better explained. If there is resources available, why not? I mean, we were talking before starting this talk with Dang Dai, and we said, okay, there are right now 94 participants to this talk, but 2,000 people will watch it in recording. So the fact that those documentation exist allows to give a massive resource of quality information about art. So if we can do that, I mean, definitely we will keep it. As Cindy said it's about making it in a qualitative way. Right now, the technique, I kept saying, many talks are too long, that I try to push you to keep that talk to only 40 minutes, because I think that's the time span that you can have. Even me, I want to read my emails right now rather than go on, because it's long. So what I mean is, we need to make it in a shorter, more concentrated, but also maybe a longer version. So what Johan has been doing is indeed making it interactive in a way. you know, for example, I was reading about the head of social media, the Mets, I think, which is a kind of a superstar in New York. The thing is about the way of talking. You know, it's about being more direct. What Johan is addressing his community directly, continuously. Very few people do it. What I like, for example, online that is missing is rather than showing me even the inside of the Guggenheim and the wall, show me the curator. Let me talk to the curator. Listen to the curator. And the curator should not speak like a teacher of art history in Harvard. He should be talking to you and me.
So would it be a way, Alain, a way of this concept you were talking before about collectors and galleries being partner? I mean, could it be a way, because it's a concept that you mentioned before, like galleries and collectors should be partners, and we should be seen as collectors as partners.
Yes, but my concern, to go back to these elements, my concern is right now to lose the best galleries and the best artists. You know, as I said, you saw it. No, I cannot be Mother Teresa and helping everyone. So I need to focus on the one I subjectively think are the most important. It's my subjectivity, of course, but I will try to focus on them and also the galleries, because the galleries play an important role. I love to hate them very often because sometimes they give a very poor service, but they are a very important filter to the thousands and thousands of artists that are out there. And in a way, they still manage that job of doing a filtering. So I find it important to support them. It can be a different role. I think that making them more aware of the business mind, because it's experiences that we have from the evolution of Facebook, but even in the art world about artsy and different things. So bringing them their attention to Johann Koenig way of doing, which is a very direct way. The communication I get from galleries right now is so impersonal. I mean, I would get the same from, I don't know, my electricity company or something like this. I mean, talk to me directly, you know, try to call me. Certainly the good galleries should call me. Some of them have been doing it, and I really appreciate that, because some people that never ever called me ask me, you know, can we talk? And they try to connect with me personally. Then it makes a difference. And why not doing it right now? What I mean is, it's very important that galleries try to think differently. And I like the comment that was made, I don't remember one of the articles I read. I think it was Tim Schneider, who's one of my favorite commentators in the art world from ArtNet. He said, the only one that will survive are the one that will be able to question every single element of their practice. And the practice of the galleries is right now questioned, and it's important to think about it now and not hoping that we're going to go back to the good old days, because this will not happen in the same way.
In fact, Alain, because there is very few minutes, but there is a question which is perfect, and I think perfect for what you're saying. The question is, I would like to know a little more about the price of contemporary art. Does it ever stop you from buying art? And do you think prices will come down?
In 2 words, yes, prices will come down, are going down. We're going to live in a smaller art market. That's for sure. I mean, you're going to diminish maybe by 50% as a whole, as in terms of size. Auction house, galleries, system, and everything. So the prices are coming down already, and it makes sense, which will maybe allow some people that could not access it before to access it again. And then we have to overcome one of those stupidities of the art market, is that price never go down. You know, I was talking, just to finish, 2 remarks I had from galleries. He said, yes, one gallery said, no, I refuse to talk about to reduce my price, because it would have meant that my price before were wrong. Okay, so if I refuse to take down my price now of primary market, it would be recognition that my price 3 months ago were wrong. I find it the most stupid comment I've ever heard, because it's like if you were saying that the price of, I don't know, of Thyssen or a major company, industrial company, is maybe worth 50% less today and sorry, then the price 3 months ago was wrong. No, we are different circumstances, so we have to review the prices for everything. Another one was saying, okay, yes, I agree that price must come down but I will do it mostly with the new production because I don't want to embarrass my collectors that bought the works before and give them the impression that they lost money. But I said to him, the people buying art are probably part of the 1%. Most of them as businesses. Doing business is accepting to take risk and to lose money. So do you think really that anyone thinks that buying a work of art is not losing half its value already when you're crossing the door of the galleries already? Who is dumb enough to think that the price that you buy for 25,000 or 100,000 or $1 million in Art Basel, Hong Kong, is worth $1 million 1 week after the fair? It's totally ridiculous. So that notion of not losing money in art is a complete fantasy.
Well, fortunately, many collectors, as you three, do not use this way of selecting art. So let's move on. We have I got like 5 minutes more, and so we can keep with few questions. Maybe Cindy. So there is a question, interesting comment. As collectors travel widely and intensively around the world to visit fairs, etc., museums, I'm wondering whether you have considered to neutralize the carbon footprint of your travels in any way. For example, investing part of the discounts in forest restoration practice. The future will require initiatives like this. We're going a little away from the collecting art in challenging times, but it's true that challenging times, it's also about sustainability and also about that. So that's why I would like to hear you about that. Are you reconsidering your way of traveling? I think Cindy has a problem with the sound. So
yeah,
so
I do. No, I can hear you. I can hear you. It's an interesting question. Yeah, I think we all have to relook at it. The Guggenheim, we're having a show now by Rem Koolhaas, and that's forced us. It's called Countryside, and it couldn't be more pertinent. And it's forced the curators, it's forced collectors, it's forced patrons to relook at how we basically travel, we move around, even put together art shows. So it's very relevant. And yes, if we haven't, then we should think about it and consider it. Don't know if we can actually execute it, but.
Thank you. So I have a last question for the three of you, and we have to be very brief. If you had one wish or one guess for the future of the art world or the art ecosystem, what would it be? Benedicta, maybe.
I think that what Alain just said about someone who doesn't really question every single thing about their practice. I think that really, my wish is that everybody does that. My wish is that we learn as a community about excesses, we learn about each other. We really analyze what have we been doing, what have we been doing well, wrong, or right, and learn and have this learning. This is a teaching moment. This is a learning experience. So that's my wish.
Alain?
Same.
Detail.
I think that now more than ever, we all look at art and to art for restoration, for reprieve, for respite. So continue to be part of this system, continue to contribute in ways that resonates with you, and just don't give up, because art is here to stay. It's always been the fabric of every society, whether it's collectors or institutions as museums. So just play your part, continue in this journey. We're here to create a legacy, an art legacy. So please plod on, stay focused, and stay safe now.
So thank you. So as I would say that the final word of this conversation, that in the end we all agree on that collectors are custodians, that your role and responsibility, it's within an ecosystem where many players have different responsibilities. And being a collector and being a patron goes far beyond just acquiring an object. I would say also that thanks to collectors and patrons, and of course galleries and artists, but collectors and patrons are part of a bigger conversation, because we've been talking a lot about community, and it's a conversation that this challenging time is proving that it keeps going. There is a global conversation that is allowed by art, and it keeps going. So my final word is art keeps going, and please keep collecting art. Thank you very much to the three of you to participate.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone
so
for
much.
joining us today. Thank you, Sabrina, especially. It's a really wonderful conversation. It adds something completely different to this program. It's really wonderful to hear it all. For everyone joining us online, I'd encourage you to check out Taipei Connections, in particular Sabrina Amrani's page. Take a look at the work she has there, and hopefully that will help contextualize a lot of what we've discussed today. We're going to be back online tonight at 9 p.m. Taipei time with a couple scholars out of the US talking about Ai Weiwei's work and activism. So feel free to join us again then. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Robin. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.